Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Key Trends for Specialty Trade Contractors, Tips for the Next Steps in Your Digital Transformation. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. You have joined the presentation listening using your computer speaker system by default. If you are having any issues hearing us, please be sure to use an Ethernet connection or move to an area with stronger Wi-Fi. Shutting down other applications on your device will also open up more bandwidth. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenters by typing your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation, and we will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. Today's webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with a link to view the recording. I would now like to introduce Donna Laquadera-Carr, Industry Insights Research Director at Dodge Construction Network. Go ahead, Donna.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you everyone for joining us here today. We're very excited to share some data with you and some real-world examples about digital transformation amongst the trades. And to do that, I'm joined by Dave Pikey, who is going to introduce himself in a little bit. In the meantime, though, I do want to just make sure everyone on the call is familiar with Dodge. So hopefully you all at least know something about Dodge Construction Network and the fact that we deliver leads, insights, and connection to construction professionals. But hopefully you're also aware of at least one or so of the organizations that we're made up of. Right now, we're a group of very strong organizations from where I work, which is Dodge Data and Analytics, and Suites, IMS, and Blue Book. But really, even though a lot of you are probably familiar with Dodge Data and Analytics, think of us as the place where you go to for project leads, as the people who bring out the starts forecasts, etc. A lot of people are not familiar with the specific offering that I am involved with, which is market research. We do custom market research that helps people understand their markets a little bit better, and we also do industry research that we do in partnership with other organizations in order to examine key trends in the industry. And because we work with those other partner organizations, the exciting thing is we're able to bring all this to you for free. So possibly the most important thing on this slide is the web address down at the bottom there, construction.com/toolkit/reports. That's where you can download all of the reports, all of the data that we're sending out into the industry. That includes both of the studies that I'll be examining today. So with that, though, I want to hand it over to Dave Pikey to introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, thank you all for joining. So my name is Dave Pikey. I run the technology group here at Hill Mechanical. Donna, do you want to just shoot us forward one? There you go. So I'll kind of talk over this. It's just a couple of screen grabs and some video showing kind of our office and our shop. So we're around a $400 million mechanical contractor. We're headquartered in the greater Chicago area. We do have operations in Indianapolis, and we travel a bit, but the bulk of our work is union contracting, again in the greater Chicago area, pipe work, sheet metal, plumbing, fire protection. We have a pretty robust service group. We do tab, and then we've got some energy solutions, which helps kind of to diversify our offerings to our customers, but also kind of rolls back into informing our construction solutions. So thanks, Donna.
All right, thanks, Dave. And before I dive in too, I did want to let everyone know, please feel free at any point during this presentation to throw questions into the question box. We'll answer them at the end, but it would be great if anything occurs to you, just throw it in there so we're ready to go with it when we get to the end of the talk. So first, we're going to talk about why engage in digital transformation and why it's really so specifically important for trade contractors. And to start that conversation, we're going to focus on data from one study in particular that we published back in the fall of 2020. We did this study in partnership with Procore. It looks at the business issues for specialty contractors, but very specifically, it looks at issues around profitability, workforce, and technology, and how those three are interrelated together. And really, it makes a great case for why the trade contractors are really starting to engage in digital transformation. You can see that we surveyed 537 contractors. The major trades that we talked to are shown on the slide here. But the one thing to bear in mind as you look at this data is that this is international data. The US made up the largest percentage, but we also had a healthy share of respondents from the UK, Canada, and Australia and New Zealand. All right, so we're going to start with the focus on profitability and specifically on profit margin and where trade contractors report that they're seeing erosion on their profit margin. This slide lists the top factors that they selected. And as you can see, the ability to improve labor productivity and planning is important to address profit margin erosion. And technology is a direct tool to help with that. It helps to automate low productivity administrative tasks. It can help you attract younger workers. And it can even provide data analysis for better decisions on current and future projects. We'll dig in a lot deeper, especially Dave will, on some of the ways that you can see technology playing out in these ways. But in addition to the skilled worker challenges being a key factor for profit margin erosion, we also see areas that are impacted specifically by having data available to you. And for instance, unforeseen conditions on the job site, right? Something that we always know has impacts contractors and is usually put in that category of nothing, something we can't do anything about. But in fact, if you have good connections, good data connections with other team members, such as civil engineers who may be surveying the site, you can get access to rich data these days from reality capture, from other ways, laser scanning, photogrammetry, that can give you that kind of insight to help minimize the number of unforeseen conditions you're likely to encounter. Similarly, inaccurate estimating can be directly addressed by data on past project performance. It can be plugged in to future data. Finally, when we're looking at these issues about profitability, poor project reporting between the field and the office is another major factor that many of the trade contractors reported. And this, of course, since 2020, we've really seen a massive growth in communication tools, and that's a key element in addressing this. However, in addition to that, you also have all of the ways in which data can actually be shared between the field and the office. I know Dave's going to get into some really interesting aspects of that, but that's a key element to help, of a way that technology can help address some of these issues. So what we land up with is when we look at margin erosion, we also knew that we needed to examine rework, that rework would be a key factor in this. And you can see that about a third actually do say that they see margin erosion caused by rework. And when we look at the top 3 causes of rework, the most important ones involve communication. So again, going back to the tools that allow us to not only communicate better, but to share data. And not just within our companies, but between us and the client and among our team members. That external connection is also critically important. And we are going to touch on that piece in particular, at least my data will, later in the presentation when we're going to look at digital workflows. There's also that factor of poor planning and management of resources. Again, an aspect that data can help address. The workforce issues that we talked about initially are also key to these margin erosion factors. And one critical stat that this study revealed is that 1 out of 3 contractors report that their workers are spending 20% or more of their time on low productivity administrative tasks. That's, that the ability to automate that, the ability to free up people to do the skilled labor that that you're bringing them on to do is an incredibly important aspect of what is helping to drive digital transformation. And you can see that in the table on the right, the trade contractors clearly recognize that. When we look at the ways that they are strategizing to counter the negative impacts of the labor shortages that they're experiencing, not only are they making investments in construction and technology to improve productivity, but especially among the larger companies, they're also increasing use of their job site automation. And again, I want to point to that more strategic partnerships with other contractors as a key factor too. That ability to exchange and have data flow between your organization and others can help you build those kind of strategic partnerships. And before I move on to the next bit of data, I actually want to bring Dave into this conversation now. Dave, what are some of the drivers that encourage your organization at Hill to invest in technology, and what do you see as key influencers in the digital transformations of other companies that you work with?
Yeah, so BIM and fabrication for us, right? So we primarily, again, on the construction side, we're primarily pipe fitters and tin knockers and sprinks and plumbers. And so it's a lot, so we've always fabricated, especially on the sheet metal side, right? Like sheet metal contractors have been making their own sheet metal for, since the 40s, right? But somewhere, I want to say somewhere around between 2000 and 2005, right? That's when a lot of companies, a lot of the subs, I would say, primarily realized that, if you start adopting these BIM systems, then you can start to drive a lot more to fabrication. And that, for us, is a huge efficiency, right? It's safety, it's efficient, what a lot of us subs say is, for every bit of labor you can drive out of the field conditions and into shop conditions, you're making the job better for yourself, but also for our customers and our clients, right? And that being the ultimate owners and the GCs, right? We're creating a better job. We're creating a better job for everybody. And then kind of what, from there, like now, once you've got, people working in those systems, then all of a sudden, if you look at the chart that you're showing right now, Donna, you could start to see how it cascades to the estimating. And then, oh, hey, let's connect this system and that system. And what about how we commission? And it just snowballed from there. But to your question specifically, it started with BIM and Fab for us. And then I would just say that it really quickly, tore through just from general contractor interest and peer pressure, right? So once you're on, say you're a plumber and you're on a job and the mechanical has got all these 3D stuff and they're showing all their 3D stuff and at the coordination meetings, and it's just it really tore through that way. So.
All right, perfect. All right, so we just looked at what's driving the industry towards digital transformation. Now let's look at how exactly contractors are currently using technology. And we're still dealing with that same study that I introduced originally, but now we're going to look at exactly how they're managing different activities and stages on their projects. So we're going to look at 3 different types of activities: pre-construction, project execution, and then analysis of project performance. And the next 3 charts are going to show the degree to which contractors are using digital tools. Are they still just relying on spreadsheets and manual processes? Or are they using internally developed or modified software, which can be really valuable for specific tasks, but can also leave data kind of siloed, right? Difficult to connect up with other companies, with other software that you might be using within your own company. And then finally, with commercially available construction software, which can occasionally still be somewhat siloed, but is more likely to be consistent and able to play with a lot of the other systems that are out there. When we look at pre-construction, we can see 2 things. First, that if you focus on the dark blue bars first, the commercially available construction software, we can see about 1/4 to 1/3 are actually using those kind of tools to manage pre-construction. So that shows already that a lot of companies have their foot in the pool. But we do see that the smaller companies, if you focus on the bright green bars this time, the smaller companies are still often relying on the spreadsheets or manual processes. And that kind of technology gap is something we typically see in a lot of our technology studies. When we look at project execution, we see the same basic pattern when it comes to smaller companies, more reliant on spreadsheets or manual processes. But again, we see an even more even distribution across all the different sizes of companies between those who are actually taking advantage of commercially available construction software. And again, it's about a third. So this is really where the investments are taking place across the board broadly in the industry. Finally, when we look at how they're analyzing construction performance, we can see that some really significant differences now in terms of the use of commercially available construction software. We do see that here, medium-sized companies and large and very large companies are really embracing commercially available software to do their analysis of construction performance. Whereas small companies, still 30%, still pretty consistent with their findings for the rest of the types of activities, but aren't quite keeping a pace with the others. So that said, I think I'm going to hand it over to Dave at this point to really give us some examples about how Hill is specifically using technology.
Yeah, I want to, okay. See if I go, okay. So what I wanted to do here, everyone, is just give you, Donna asked me to provide some specific examples for some of the data that she's been showing. And by the way, I'll just tell you anecdotally, we see that exactly. Like, we're a subcontractor, so we're on jobs all the time with other contractors, large, small, medium, and I can just tell you anecdotally, we pretty much see what her data is showing on a daily basis. So. But what we wanted to do here is give you a little example of some of this digital transformation, commercially available software, what it's doing for us. And I chose estimating, excuse me, and I did that specifically because I think on the BIM side, I think that's a pretty mature technology. I think a lot of companies, big, small, medium, mom and pop, to billion-dollar operations have really embraced BIM. But I wanted to show a little bit of a different angle. So what you're looking at here is a PDF of a mechanical project where we have to estimate this. And so this is something that we do all day, every day, right? And I will say to my friends out there who are more design build. Maybe you're on the West Coast where design build is almost the norm. I will say even in that case, and that's probably 30 or 40% of our work as well. But even in that case, at some point we've got to provide numbers, right? We've got to give people a count, and we've got to give people a numbers. Whether those are numbers for a GC we've already partnered up with, or it's a true bid build, and we've just we're competitively bidding. However it goes, we've got to provide numbers. So what I'm showing here is the software that we use to do that. And this, I do like to be fully transparent here. So this is called SMAP. It's an Autodesk fabrication product, and it's tied into to the Autodesk fabrication BIM and build systems. But I have a couple of stories to tell about this and about how much benefit it's brought us. So what I'm showing you right now is just a little animation of what that looks like on our screen. So whether it's a PM or somebody in our pre-con group, what we're doing is just clicking around and over top of the design document, so that we can build up our estimate. And I know it's 3D and it looks complicated, but I guess the first story I would tell you here is that the technology makes this fast, right? It's a really important component of this. It is faster for me to price a job using this technology and using this software that's going to end up creating this non-coordinated 3D model than it would be for me to do it any other way. So that's that's one thing I'd like everybody to understand is this is fast. Now, I do want to stress one thing I just said. It's not a coordinated model, right? Because that would be crazy, right? We're not crazy. We do self-coordinate when we do the takeoff, meaning like if a chilled water system has to pass over or under another itself, that chilled water system, we have to account for those elbows to change the elevation, but we have to do that regardless, right? Because that represents labor and material costs for us. So even if we're doing a takeoff with a pencil and a piece of paper, we would still have to self-coordinate, right? We have to capture those changes in elevation and those, those ups and downs and fittings to account for that material and labor. But again, using this software is it's so much faster. So what you're looking at right now, that's the end result of this is the end result of a takeoff. And again, it's fast and it's accurate. And I want to kind of, the second story I want to tell here is just to dive into how accurate it is. Excuse me, I've got a lot going on this slide. I will say the point of this slide is not to have you understand the costs and the things inside the red boxes. It's just to point out that if you look at the piece of duct on the right side, right, there's a lot going on that piece of duct, and nobody outside of a sheet metal contractor has to know anything about this. But the point here is that there is a lot going on that duct, and so if you're doing a manual process, or if you're taking things off without technology, right, you've got to do one of two things: either count all that stuff up or make assumptions, right? Use rules of thumb, percentages, what have you, right? And until about I would say we started this journey somewhere around maybe 2008. And we started doing contract work in 1936. So there's a little chunk of time there where we didn't have this type of technology, right? And we did stuff by hand, and we used spreadsheets, and we used percentages and rules of thumb. And when we made our transformation, and it didn't happen overnight, by the way. So from say 2008 to maybe around 2015, until everything was like tied together and dialed in, right? You can do it in stages. But during that time of transformation, one thing we learned was that the costs associated with our rules of thumb were way off. And what we found, and I think this is super interesting, is what we found was that we understand what the cost of metal is, right? That's something that we price into every job, right? What we don't actually update every time we do a project is how much is a nut or a washer or a piece of conduit or all the other little parts and pieces that go into our ductwork systems. And the same thing would be true of, piping, plumbing, it doesn't matter. But in this case, I'm going to specifically speak to some ductwork. So you don't go out to the market and say, how much is a screw, right? Every time you bid a job, you just have rules of thumb. And those rules of thumb typically are percentages. So you would say, hey, how much is metal? Well, it's, 52 cents a pound, right? And if you have another, $3 million project that you're bidding, yeah, you're going to go out to the market and say, hey, what do you think we're going to spend for metal on this? And maybe it's 55 cents a pound, right? But what we would do to flesh out the rest of our bid is use percentages. And what happened is over decades, those percentages relative to the cost of metal wildly diverged. But there was no way for us to capture that, right? There was no way for us to price that in from the market because we were just using percentages. So in other words, the cost of all that other stuff, what we call ancillaries, the cost of all those ancillaries basically was pegged to the cost of metal, and it just rose and fell, however metal. But that's not actually the real world, right? It's a specific case where percentages and rules of thumb are are specifically not allowing us to see price movement in the market over decades. And I'll just to kind of put a little bow on this story, what happened is the price of that stuff went way up relative to the cost of metal. And I think it makes sense, right? Things that are manufactured, between 1980 and 2010, things that were manufactured got a lot more expensive. And just raw metal that has, it's the biggest component of it is the material cost, right? Because the labor to produce that is it's just so automated, right? That really, kind of like inflation, it didn't go up that much over the course of those few decades. But so again, we were really losing our shirts every time we bid with those rules of thumb. By 2010, and using this technology, not only did it expose that to us, but it also allowed us to just get more accurate moving forward. So I've got a couple of other there. That's a pipe takeoff, and again, I know it looks like there's a lot going on with like valves and hangers, and I could easily see somebody thinking like, man, that's a lot of effort to put in. To a project where you're just bidding it and you have a 1 in 4, 1 in 10 chance of getting it. But you're just gonna have to take my word for it. This software makes this much, much, much faster. So it's much faster to do that. And then once you use the tech to do that, then you get all this rich data. So that's what I'm kind of showing here, which is a schedule of values. And I do want to just go across the top there and just like, you got, for us on the pipe side, the Mechanical Contractors Association, or MCA, is kind of like they provide labor values for all this, and it's just industry standard. It's like blue book pricing for cars. Like everybody in America, frankly, across the world, I know Australia's got their own, but like everybody's got some version of the MCA, and so it's the software is pumping out like your man days and your hanger fab and cost and ancillary cost. That's kind of what I was talking about before, total cost. All these things you get, when you do the takeoff with the technology, you get this super rich spreadsheet, or what we call a schedule of values, across all your systems. And I think I've got, I just have one more slide here, and then Donna, I'll pass it back to you. But we started with BIM and Fab, and then you move into, like in this particular case, estimating. What I'm showing you here again, it's not to have you like be able to digest all the screens. It's just a little bit of a visual to let you know, like there are so many other places then that we move, from there when it comes to, injecting software into our business, tightening up our process, moving away from manual process and spreadsheets. So on the very far left there, you've got a bunch of words coming down the screen, kind of where the cursor is. Those are all different systems that we've either bought or built, and they're tied into how we do pricing, into our BIM systems, on the lower right-hand corner, what you're looking at is a piece of software that we have embedded inside Revit, so that when we do finish our BIM, we're using self-made tools that interact with the Revit API to do analysis on the quality of those models, right? Like when you're in the coordination process, like, you want to know, like, hey, how divergent is this coordinated model, from what I bid? So it's just, it becomes, it becomes like system after system after system, once you kind of start to go down that road. And Donna, I know that was long-winded, but I'll pass it back to you now.
All right. Let's get this screen moving advanced. Sorry, my screen is, there we go. So, did I skip a screen? I think I skipped a screen. Hold on. There we go. Sorry about that, everyone. So the percentages that I was showing here are those who say, among the trade contractors that we surveyed, over 500 contractors, what percentage are still mostly using manual methods for key activities? And I'm not going to spend a great deal of time on this slide, but I just want to point out that if you look at some of the things that have the biggest percentages, labor scheduling, labor planning and forecasting, equipment tracking, daily logs and progress tracking, they tie back in very closely to a lot of the issues that we saw the profitability margin being eroded on. You know, that there's such a, what this is really about is the opportunity that's there for technology to really help address bottom line issues for trade contractors. And of course, again, you know, I've already shown that there's a lot of commitment, there's a lot of engagement by trade contractors already with this. So it's certainly not a question of contractors aren't interested. What it becomes, so you know, we want to know what are the big challenges that are keeping you from engaging more in and specifically adopting and implementing construction technology. You can see that it's really about limited resources, workforce issues, which really comes into what too much training required whittles down to, because you can't take your limited staff and spend a great deal of time doing a lot of technology training with them. A lack of time to evaluate technology options, a critical point, because there's so much out there right now. Lack of internal capability to manage or implement technology. Again, those workforce challenges that we're seeing are important. And even the resistance from field staff, that's about not having enough change management and training to get the field staff on board. But maybe the most important thing in this slide is what doesn't figure highly, which is that they believe their current methods are better. You know, these are the people who are like, I don't need it, I don't want it, it's not going to do me any good. And really, it's just a very small percentage overall of all the people we surveyed. I mean, we can really see a deep level of commitment and engagement by the trades to digital transformation, but they just have some hurdles that they have to go through. And Dave, this is where I want to bring you back into the conversation. What challenges does your company face in continuing your digital transformation, and what challenges do you see the other firms that you work with facing?
Yeah, so this is such a good question, and when Donna and I were kind of practicing, you know, before the webinar, I'm really glad that I was super glad that we brought this up, because I really do have something to say when it comes to this, and that is that, you know, at this point it's 2023, and there is so much technology out there. There are so many startups. I'm sure a lot of you that are listening, watching this webinar have seen, right? Like, there's so many different, like, drone this and reality capture and listen, I'm a technologist at heart, right? And so I encourage all of it. I encourage the startups. I encourage people to be entrepreneurial. I encourage you know, people to help make our industry better, right? Like, you know, I've dedicated my life to construction, engineering, architecture, and technology, right? So trust me, I'm the biggest advocate you'll find out there for this stuff. I will say, though, that it's a challenge, and I encourage everyone to be fairly careful here, because there is a lot out there, and a lot of it is not ready for prime time, right? Like, you know, you've got people looking for funding, you've got firms looking to get purchased, and again, you know, God bless them. It's all good, but in terms of adopting the technology for commercial use on at-risk projects, I would caution everybody to be pretty careful, because there's a lot of stuff out there, and not all of it's ready, and not all of it's funded, and not all of it is going to, quite frankly, is going to survive. So that would be one challenge, you know. And then the other challenge, if I may, Donna, is just to kind of like, you know, is just encourage people to dedicate people to your journey. And what I mean by that is, like, you know, if you look at this, like, you know, Inside Hill, like, I started a technology group maybe around 2010 or 2012. I pulled those people from, I pulled them from BIM, but I also pulled them from project management and other areas of the business, or hired from college. But the point being, they don't roll up to your BIM group. They don't roll up to our project managers. They don't roll up to operations. They really roll up to corporate, and they're not IT, and they're dedicated to technology across the business. I don't think it's super fair to take an IT person and ask them to be a construction technology specialist. It may work out, so I'm not saying don't do it. What I am saying though is that be careful, because it may or may not be somebody that has an IT background, but you're going to want to have a champion. And it might end up being a full-time position. It might end up being more than one full-time position, to be perfectly honest with you, right? Like, we're a $400 million company, and we've got, probably 4 or 5 people full-time dedicated to construction technology. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I see that a lot out there in the market. Would it make sense for a $20 million mechanical? Probably not, right? Maybe that's a half a person. And you'll have to, I think that, every organization has to kind of find their way. But specifically, Donna, what I would encourage people to do is to be real careful about that, and to think long and hard about dedicating somebody to making their journey successful.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Dave. So next, we're going to shift a little bit into the discussion just from the broader issue of digital technology to specifically digital workflows and how those are deployed in companies. We're also going to shift studies. So this is the other major study that I told you we were going to talk about. This one we did in partnership with Trimble. And actually, while the report I have featured on this slide is the one that's geared towards specialty trade contractors, and the one that I will be drawing data from through the rest of this presentation, it isn't the only one. We actually surveyed owners, architects, general contractors, and engineers as well for this. So we kind of wanted to get, especially since it's about connecting, right? We wanted to get a comprehensive understanding of the degree to which digital workflows are being utilized in the construction industry. This, unlike the previous study, this is just a purely US study. And when it comes to the trade contractors, the responses are based on over 200 trade contractors who replied. You can again see the specialty trades, the largest share that contributed to it. These weren't the only ones we targeted. These were the only ones that had a significantly large share of responses. Before we dive into workflows though, in order to make digital workflows first, you need a certain level of digital sophistication in your company. You need to be deploying software. You need to have data present digitally in order for you to be able to share it. So to really understand even the degree to which the industry was ready to embrace digital workflows, we wanted to understand where they stood on that larger technology spectrum. And the good news is that for the most part, about 80% of the industry is using software sufficiently to really be in a good position to take advantage of digital workflows. So that's what the good news is here. They're not the ones really relying deeply on manual methods or just occasionally using software are definitely not the rule. They're the exception. On the other hand, we see that only about 34% are really either integrating their systems, already sharing data between systems, or have a single connected construction management solution. And yes, 34% is actually pretty good, and it's pretty consistent, right, with what we've been seeing through the rest of this presentation in terms of the data. The two studies do align pretty closely. But when you compare that to the level of digital sophistication that you find in the other people we surveyed, in the general contractors, in the architects and engineers, and in the owners, you can see that the trades are lagging behind them in terms of that overall digital sophistication. And that is going to be a challenge in the long run, especially since look at who is the biggest user of technology at this point. It's the owners, right? And the owners are going to be looking for digital project delivery so that they can take advantage of that rich data as they continue with the rest of the asset life cycle. So, it really is going to be much easier for trade contractors to become a bigger part of the process. We've done other studies that clearly demonstrate that getting key trades involved in pre-design, in design, or far before construction begins tends to have a significantly positive impact on improving the overall project. And but to get people involved in a larger industry that's going digital, the trade contractors have to be ready and have to be digital to participate in that. Now let's shift actually to the digital workflows and our examination of them. So we looked at two different types of digital workflows. We looked at those that are connecting pieces of a company's organization together. So finance connected to project management, connected to HR, connected to business strategy, etc. Right? All the different parts of your organization. How well are they sharing data across your organization? In addition to that, we also looked at how well organizations are sharing data with other team members on the project team. So, with the architects, contractors, etc. And what we find, and this is consistent not just among the trade contractors, but across the board, is that there is much wider use of internal digital workflows than multi-company digital workflows. You can see that here if you compare the right-hand sides of these bars together. That's where that's those two colored bars on the right-hand side refer to 50% or more of the project data are being shared digitally. And again, this is really consistent. This is something that the numbers vary slightly, but the pattern is 100% the same across the industry, and it makes sense. It's much easier to start making connections internally. Not that it's easy, but it's easier than it is to make connections externally. Digging in a little deeper on the internal digital workflows, we can see a couple of things. First, that almost every specialty trade contractor is using these to a certain degree. 91% are engaged in them. However, it's only about 40% who are using them to share the majority of their project data. And who are they doing the sharing with? Well, when you look at the most frequently connected internal departments, it makes sense. It's the tactical ones. It's the ones that have to do with running the projects, keeping the projects going. Those are the ones that are really connecting together. When you get to the ones that need multiple inputs and have to do more with strategy, those are the least frequently connected, like leadership and business development, where you're going to want inputs from a broad range across the project. So, this is just, again, this is about where the trade contractors are right now on their digital transformation journey. It's clear they're deeply invested and they're engaged, but there's also a clear path forward, right, on where they can go. When it comes to multi-company digital workflows, we see that, again, the vast majority are at least doing this, are connected and sharing project data with other project team members. Over 80% are doing so, but we only see 21% doing so on the majority of their project data. Again, not a terribly big surprise. Another thing that's not at all a surprise is that by far the vast majority of them are sharing that data with the general contractors. And that just makes sense, right? But the real opportunity here is to see an increase in the 1/3 or so who are sharing data with the architects and the consulting engineers and the owners. There's a huge opportunity for present there for that. All right, we're going to kind of shift, the study kind of shifted gears here, and I'm going to kind of shift gears here as I talk about it. We identified that, one of the big challenges, of course, is knowing what to invest in. And some of it has to do with all the issues Dave raised, which I'm glad he did because I can't touch on those, and they're so critical, like just understanding what you need to. But the other piece that can help contractors, and that we were trying to get at in this study, is looking at where their investments might have the biggest payoff, right? What functions can you invest in technology where you're likely to see the biggest impact? And to measure that, we looked at the 20 activities that you see identified here on this slide. And we asked them first to identify how frequently they associate these activities as the root causes of error or errors or delays on their project. And that is shown in the right-hand side on the vertical axis, right? So the higher you are, higher the numbers are on the chart, the more frequently they find that they're experiencing these root causes due to these specific processes. Then we asked those who said, yeah, we can see that connection. We said, well, how much, when you do find that happens, how much of an impact does it have? And that impact factor is the one on the horizontal margin. So the further things are over to the right, the bigger impact the actual problems that these functions are causing has on the projects. So you can see very visually and very clearly that a bunch of construction operation processes really are where the biggest benefit can be gained from improving them. This is everything from project document management to change management to job cost projections to labor management and materials and inventory management. This is really at the core of where, according to these contractors, and this so far has nothing to do with digital workflows, just where they find the processes have cause problems with the greatest frequency and have the biggest impact. In addition to that, though, I do want to call your attention to some of the orange numbers, because they're really high on the impact side, even though they're not quite as high on the frequency side. And there is a real question about the degree to which everything is transparent enough where contractors are always aware of the degree to which some of these processes are causing these impacts. And I do want to explain why I say that as we continue forward. But with this slide shows you the top areas in which they're at for those same 20 processes. What is actually how many are actually using digital workflows frequently or very frequently to conduct them? And you can see that where we saw the least concerns, administrative processes, are also where digital workflows are really taking hold, where we see that there's a lot of activity around construction operation processes, but we see that field crew and management processes utilize digital workflows a lot less frequently than the other processes. And why is that important? Because we actually had a very unexpected finding. We didn't go into the study looking for this, but one thing we discovered is that those who are using digital processes for some digital workflows for these processes were able to had deeper insight into the impact of those processes on their projects. They were far more frequently, and I mean really far more frequently, able to attribute that this is the heart of what my problem is. You can see 84% versus 39% who weren't using digital workflows. And this is critical, right? If you're going to improve productivity, if you're going to make changes in your organization, the first thing you need is insight into what needs to be improved. And that is clearly what these deliver. And that whole point was reinforced when we asked them to identify the top benefits that they see from employing digital workflows. You can see that by far the top benefit is better informed decision making. And of course, you're going to make better decisions if you have greater clarity and understand your processes better. We also see increased labor productivity and increased efficiency of internal processes as big process and business benefits that they're getting out of this. We see increased profitability on projects due to investments in digital workflows. And I really want to point to the top improved project outcome, which is quality, because I really think that is extremely telling. You know, I know that every company takes great pride in the work they do, and every company builds that reputation with their clients based on quality. And certainly you want to be the most competitive on quality, and understanding how errors and delays get caused within your processes goes directly to the kind of quality you can deliver. So with that, I am going to hand it back over to Dave to give us a little bit more example of some of the insights that they've been able to see from their adoption of digital processes.
Thanks, Donna. Okay, so sorry. Okay, so again, in an effort to be like really transparent here, I'm going to walk through Power BI screens. If you're not familiar, Power BI is a data visualization tool Another one out there is called Tableau. There's probably a good number on the market at this point, excuse me. But what I would say here is that this is a current trend that we're seeing. So like all the like kind of previous examples and a lot of the stuff that Donna went through are are areas of construction technology that have existed for at least 10 years, maybe some of them a lot longer, right? But the industry has been, if you look at all the different buckets that she showed, like the industry has been adopting at different rates and with different levels of success a lot of that stuff over the last couple of decades. And I think it's super interesting to see how that's shaked out, by area, by different types of trade. Super powerful data. What this data visualization, though, is to what we see in the market is somewhat more recent. And the crux of it is these are platforms. And again, Power BI is a Microsoft product. There's other products out there. I just like to be transparent in terms of what specific technology I'm showing you. But what these tools do is provide visualization tools plugged into multiple data sets. And this is the power of that. What I mean by that is that you can have your ERP, right? For example, maybe it's your business system here. I'll advance it one slide here. So in this particular case, you're looking at data on our incidents and safety, right? But I just want to be super clear here, right? Like some of our incidents, we have 5 or 6 different businesses. If you look at the top there, those are a bunch of different like business groups. We have 3 different ERPs, meaning 3 different business systems. We have a number of different safety directors. We have some people are using smart sheets. Some people are using spreadsheets. Some businesses that are under the Greater Hill umbrella are using proprietary software, kind of like what we were talking about earlier. A lot of some of them hand built something, right? Yeah. The power here is that this Power BI window is live connected to all of those data sets. It's live connected to spreadsheets that sit on an admin's computer. It's live connected to our business systems. So, and at the same time. So and then you can flip through once you create your data view, or what we call a visualization. Once you create it, it's live, and then you can flip through. So here's another example, where you're looking at, manpower ratios, right? This is really important to us, right? Like general foremen, superintendents, apprentices, journeymen, they all have different, different rates, right? Like we're 100% union, so it's public. You could, all of the union's wages and benefits are publicly available, right? So, but how they mix now is something that we can control, right? And and we get benefits by it benefits us by having, for example, really robust training programs, right? Like if you have robust training programs and a great safety program and a lot of that other stuff, right? Well, your apprentices may be more valuable to you than perhaps to another contractor, right? And then having data on the ratios on your projects is real valuable. And so here's a live look into that, right? And again, this is connected to our business system, to our ERP. So this isn't like somebody making guesses. This is according to the checks we cut last week. Payroll, right? You're looking at data based on payroll, which is so powerful, right? And then here again, and again, everyone, my point here isn't to have you understand the actual data that you're looking at, but these are more just visuals. The story I'd really encourage you to take away from this is that these visualization tools are really powerful, especially when you connect them to all of your systems It's a live link to multiple data systems at the same time, and then it's got some really powerful tools to allow you to visualize them. And so, yeah, could you do this here? I'm just gonna go back to one I think is a little bit more visually interesting, right? So, like, could you do all this with a spreadsheet and a pivot table? Sure, but it's a manual process. It's not live connected to anything, and there's a ton of places for there to be errors, inconsistencies, and anytime you've got somebody opening up a spreadsheet and pounding through it by hand, you know you've got a bottleneck, because you know that person probably has another job. The data visualization tools kind of take all that, they make it background, and they just provide you with really powerful, really sophisticated ways of looking at multiple data sets at the same time. So, Donna, that was what I was going to leave everyone with, is just, you know, a little taste of the power of data visualization. And it's just one, listen, it's just one last piece of a digital transformation that we're seeing in the market, but this one's current. And it's happening right now.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Dave. Right now, I'm checking the questions box, and I don't see anything in it specifically for us right now. Ordinarily, I'd kind of do a little bit of tap dancing with Dave and I and just have a little chat, but we only have about 2 minutes left. So perhaps it's best to just kind of wrap things. Please, though, as we say our goodbyes, if there's anything that you're interested in, what do you recommend? We finally do have a question. What ERP do you recommend for your trade? Dave, I think that one's for you.
Yeah, we use Penta, and Penta's, it's not like super well known. It is if you're a mechanical or an electrical. You know, but there's, you know, Great Plains and Dynamics and Coins, and there's a ton of them out there. I'm not going to recommend any of them, because it's really, you know, here's what I'll say. I have never met a person that ever said the words, "I love my ERP." Right? It's just it does, you know, but it's necessary. Here's what I would recommend. If you are looking to move ERPs, just make sure you're asking if they have a robust API. If you're not familiar, API is an application programming interface. It's technical, I get it, but what it does isn't. It's all you got to know is that APIs allow softwares to talk to other softwares. And if you have a software and it doesn't have an API, there's no way to get it to talk to another software. So if you want to make sure you don't kind of like paint yourself into a corner, make sure you're looking at make sure you're looking at ERPs and business systems that have robust APIs.
All right, excellent. So with that, we want to thank you. We are going to be doing a series of these kind of webinars over the next year, hoping to do them about every other month. So please keep on the alert. We're trying to specifically really find things of value to the trades. Also, if you guys have any requests, things you'd like to see, please feel free to reach out to me or to Dodge in general and contact us. And I really want to thank Dave. Dave, you've really contributed so much great, valuable information. We really appreciate it. And I want to thank everyone who attended, and we'll have a good day.
Awesome. Thank you.